we win. That is our motto. Sometimes we win. Sometimes we don't win. Don't give us the bird. Don't give us your stink eye. We try our best and we're successful. Come watch our show. Bet Rivers sponsors. It's time to start. Enjoy the show.
Welcome aboard, everyone, to Betting Weekly Live, and it's Monday, the 3rd of February. You with Steve Wyss and you with James Eastham. James, you've got a rather elaborate-looking setup there.
Yes.
How's things going? Did you have a good weekend?
Yes, very good weekend, Steve. Great to see you again. We obviously normally do the Thursday live show when we're on together, but I'm on Monday. Yeah, good weekend. Fascinating weekend of football in Europe. We obviously cover all the games every week on the weekly show. But it's great to be here on a Monday and looking at not only European games, but also a couple of big games we've got going on in England today. So it'd be great to run through them with you today.
Yeah, the headline game is Chelsea against West Ham in the Premier League. Also a big championship match in the northeast of England. And we've got Serie A action, La Liga. And there's a bonus special. We are gonna pick your brains about the Coupe de France matches tomorrow, seeing as you are on the show. We talk about the betting weekend. Just some stats here from the Bet Rivers Sportsbook. There was a massive loser on Manchester City draw double chance against Arsenal at -112, but that match resulted in the biggest public win of the weekend by total money retained by the public on the Bet Rivers Sportsbook. So Arsenal winning the game and the goals was a very good result for the public. Also, the Nottingham Forest versus Brighton game resulted in the third biggest public win of the weekend. So it was generally a pretty good weekend for the bettors in the Premier League. Barcelona versus Alaves was a significant $27,000 loser on the over 3.25 Asian goal line. Barcelona scuppering the overs backers and the handicap backers in that particular match against Alaves. But I was actually on the golf course yesterday. I was at Mountain in Portugal. For those who might have seen my tweet over the weekend, I was watching a bit of Division 2 soccer, Portimonense. I've got the scarf actually right next to me here. So a good bit of local action I've been watching. But I was actually chatting to a Chelsea fan yesterday and I was asking him what he thought about the match today against West Ham. Chelsea, the overwhelming favourites, -315. West Ham, +750, and the ties at +475. Over 3.5 goals is minus money for this game. Under 3.5 goals is at -112. We'll talk about that match in a minute, but I just want to welcome everyone into the stream as always. Let's have a look here. Villa fan, how are things with you? Not a good result for you guys on Saturday. What do you think of that match against Wolves? Disky as well, great to see you. Ian Messina, Brian Murhill, several others as well. Duncan Evans, Timothy Carrington. Good to see you on the comments. But James, Chelsea for you, -315. Would you go in heavy on them here as minus money favourites?
No, I wouldn't. I can see why they are short favourites to win the game. It makes sense in some ways when you look at this game. They've got a fantastic head-to-head record against West Ham. I would say that first of all. Now, it depends whether you consider that important, going back a long, long way, but they have won, by my reckoning, 14 of the last 19 head-to-head. So they've got that in their favour. They're not in the greatest form. We have to say that. They've only won one of their last 7 Premier League games. But when I say I can understand why they're short price favourites to win the game, -315, the main reason for that, Steve, is I've had a good long look at Chelsea's home fixtures this season. They've had 11 home games. It's amazing how tough those fixtures have been, because 8 of the 11 home games they've had so far this season have been against sides who are currently in the top 10 in the Premier League, which is massively skewed towards the top half of the table. So Chelsea fans who may look at that home record and think, well, it's okay, it's not amazing, but it's okay. I personally think it will get better, because when you look through the list of teams they played, At home, they've already played Arsenal, they've already played Nottingham Forest, Newcastle United, Manchester City, Bournemouth, and so on and so on. So this is one of the few times this season where they'll be playing a team who are in the bottom half of the table. And so I think, people would look at Chelsea's home form and think maybe they're not in the best form, but this will be one of the easier games they've had at home so far this season. So I think the price is fair. I wouldn't be going in strongly on them at -315, primarily because of their current form, which is a bit of a concern for me because they're not winning many games at the moment. But who do I think will win the game? If you put prices to one side, I do think Chelsea will win it. I think if they didn't, it would be a massive case of underachievement for them. Let's not forget as well, they've already beaten West Ham in the first meeting this season back in September. They won that game fairly easily away from home against West Ham. It was 3-0. Jackson got a couple of the goals for people who are looking at who might do well tonight, and Cole Palmer was on the score sheet as well. So there's plenty of evidence, I think, that Chelsea will get the 3 points. But that price, I don't know what you think, Steve. It's quite short, isn't it? -315. You'd probably, I think, like a Chelsea team to be in better form than they are at the moment before you start either backing them at that price in a parlay or maybe look at them on the Asian handicap, something like that. So not quite enough on Chelsea at the moment for me to be siding with them in terms of a selection.
Welcome in Reece Conroy and Adam Thompson as well. Arca Brow says Jackson anytime score at +115 looks like great value. If you can trust him to hit the back of the net, he can be a bit wavy, can't he? Disky likes over 3.5 goals. And Arca Brow again, Chelsea and to win and over 2.5 goals seems solid. And yes, Villa fan, there are issues. I think the squad is an issue with Villa for sure. It could be a struggle in the second half of the season to, still while you're in the Champions League anyway.
Yeah.
Chris Graham doesn't trust Chelsea or West Ham, and that kind of sums it up for a lot of bettors out there. Chelsea now -295, so they have drifted a little bit. I think they'll win, but I don't know if they'll cover a handicap. I don't know if they'll cover a large goal line. I thought Nigel Seeley and Jack Wright break this game down on the Premier League show. That's well worth a watch. I think both made some very good points. I think Nigel suggested win 0 for Chelsea or win by 1 goal. And I could see that happening as well. I've got 2 bets for the game. I know one of them is the same as yours, so I'll let you do that one. But I've actually got a same game parlay, would you believe, James? Really
Steve, what are you doing?
Yeah, I know, absolutely shocked because
we're not fans of it. Normally.
As I say, this Chelsea fan I was speaking to yesterday, he was actually quite confident about the result here, but he said there's a player for the rest of the season, keep your eye on this guy, Noni Madueke. And I think he's a player that divides opinion, really, because sometimes he seems really wasteful. But he's actually scored in his last 2 games. Some Chelsea fans don't even want him to start. So, obviously make sure, if you're betting on him, then the bet will be void. But I really like him to have over 2.5 shots and over 0.5 shots on target at -143. In other words, for him to have 3 shots in the game and 1 of them on target. I think it's a great shout. This is a bloke who has had 77 shots in 21 starts this season, with 27 on target. He's had 7 shots on target in his last 8 games and 23 shots in his last 8 games. Scored in his last 2. I think Madueke cut in on the right-hand side. West Ham concede a lot of shots. Chelsea tend to have a lot of shots. They don't always convert them. I think Madueke, if he starts, could cause them quite a few problems on there. But whether they finish their chances, Chelsea, that's a different matter, which is why I like this other bet. And I know you're a fan of this bet. This is your selection for the game.
I am, Steve. And I know we had a chat, haven't we, about this before the show. Not that we colluded on our bets, because we never do, but we just found we were going for the same bet. And I think we are going against at least somebody you mentioned in the comments there. I think it was Disky who's going over goals. So we're going the other way. If it was you, Disky, under goals, and under 3.5 goals, I thought was way too big when I looked at the odds. So you brought them up on screen. Under 3.5 goals is -112, as is over 3.5 goals. So that's where the goal line is set. If you just look at the stats on these 2 teams this season, that price on under 3.5 goals is way too big. I'm just going to run through the stats as I've got them here. Chelsea games, 16 out of 23 have gone under 3.5 goals. West Ham games, 15 out of 23 have gone under. So you're looking at about 66, 67% there. Then if you look at the home games and the away games that are relevant, that being Chelsea home games and West Ham away games, the number of combined matches that have had under 3.5 goals, it goes up to 73%. So that's just the stats so far this season. I know they're not everything. Game state and the importance of the match also comes into consideration as well. But just on those top line stats, I do think that under 3.5 goals at minus 112, it's a 50-50 call in terms of the prices, is a good shout. And I also think West Ham will try and keep it really tight here. Now, whether they can or not is another matter, but why wouldn't they? Yeah, why wouldn't they? They're going away from home against a team who are better than them, who are a dangerous team, who are going to do most of the attacking. I think Graham Potter will try to set up West Ham first and foremost to be as difficult to beat as possible. And if they can keep it tight early on, I think that's the way the game will probably go. So that would be my pick on the game, Steve. I think under 3.5 goals at minus 112 is a really good shout because, as I say, I think you've got the stats in your favour. And then secondly, I think certainly in terms of West Ham and how they will approach the game, it looks to me like it will be an unders game as well. So I was really surprised at that price. I thought that those prices for me were more like where maybe under over 3 goals would be set. And it's under 3.5. So under 3.5 at minus 112 is my main pick on this game.
I totally agree. I think under 3.5 goals is probably the best bet for the game. It's a value bet as well. It might be an uncomfortable watch at times because Chelsea will create a lot of chances. They'll shoot a lot. And, you know, if they did actually have a game where everything went in the back of the net, it could be one of those nights. My big problem, if you're betting on the overs, is I'm not sure West Ham will score because I don't think they've got a lot available to them right now. Jared Bowen, I think he's still injured. Somerville doubtful. Antonio's probably done for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I tend to agree, Steve. I mean, I looked through that before coming up with this as a pick. I just thought, well, let's have a look at what they've got available. I mean, there's some talk Jared Bowen might be available, but you know, he's been out for I think a month. If he is, and it's a big if at the moment, it would obviously be off the bench at best. Then you're looking at Lucas Paqueta to score. Kudos. They don't have, as far as I can see at the moment, a player that, like you're saying, you would really hang your hat on to score. And I think that just feeds into the same thing. You know, Potter, if he's going to do what I think he'll do, will focus on trying to make them difficult to break down and then just see what happens really going forward. So like you, I think everything here does point towards it being a low scoring encounter because I'm the same. I couldn't really, with any confidence or conviction, see West Ham scoring here.
Adam Thompson says Chelsea to score 2 or 3 goals on the goals market at plus 100 feels a good bet. That could happen. I could see 2-0 or 3-0 here. Maybe 1-0 as well. I think it's very much on the cards if it is a tighter game than expected. Meninda, that's a funny comment. Is it the real Steve or the AI version? I've got an SGP. I don't mind SGPs on the day, Meninda, and I know the team news when I'm a bit more. The markets are more stable. Yeah, this one just came to me. It just came to me really well. So what can I say? And apologise if I do sound a bit weird today. It's the room. It's very echoey here that I'm in. For Wednesday show, I might try and set up somewhere differently. Duncan agrees that unders is the best way to go. Potter will have drilled West Ham, and they don't have much firepower. Half-time tie, Chelsea to win plus 360. That could very, very well come in if it is a very tight first half. I can tell you, in terms of the money for the game, 95% of the money is on Chelsea, 93% of the tickets. Just 73% of the money is on the over 3.5 goals, though, which that basically suggests that the bettors are quite divided on the overs market. Normally, the overs money is around the 90% mark. So I think that does suggest that the goal line probably is too high for what it is, personally. Anyway, let us know what you are taking on that game. And check out the Premier League show for Nigel and Jack's thoughts as well. We've got a match in the Championship today. Middlesbrough, Sunderland, North East derby. Wow, this is a tough one, James. I've got to say, I look at this fixture and two teams that don't like each other at all.
Yeah,
Middlesbrough the favourites plus 120, Sunderland plus 188. The ties at plus 220. I've got a very small lead on this game for the tie, but I'm really not sure. Is there anything that caught your eye for this fixture?
Yeah, a couple of things. And just to set the scene for people who maybe don't follow the Championship that closely, or maybe don't follow Middlesbrough or Sunderland that closely either. Like you say, Steve, this is a really big rivalry in the northeast of England. Maybe not the biggest rivalry, certainly for Sunderland. That would be Newcastle. But as we know, Newcastle are a Premier League team at the moment. So really, for both teams, this is arguably their biggest game of the season. I would imagine it's going to be a sellout crowd. I think I read that it's pretty close to that already, and there'll be a big away following of support for Sunderland as well. So a massive game, but not just in terms of the rivalry, also a massive game in terms of the league table, because Middlesbrough are sitting 7th in the Championship and Sunderland are sitting 4th. So you've got two teams here really ambitious to continue to challenge near the top of the table. Promotion would be the focus for both of them. Certainly would be for Sunderland, in slightly better position at the moment. So a massive game, and for people that follow that division in particular, I think this will be an absolutely fascinating watch. Looking at the form of the two teams, nothing really stood out to me. Sunderland have been very difficult to beat recently. They're unbeaten in their last 5. They've lost only 1 in 10. But longer term, few doubts about Sunderland in that they've only lost 4 games in the Championship this season, but all of those 4 defeats have been away from home. They're unbeaten at home, but they have dropped points away from home now. It's still a very good home record. I think they've got the very good away record. I think it's the 3rd best away record in the division, but that is where they have dropped points. And then when you look at Middlesbrough, their form figures are kind of no better than okay. I think they've won 2 in 5. And I think they've only won 3 of their last 10. So it's one of those games where you can't really, for me, make a really strong case for either team. I think Middlesbrough at plus 120, absolutely no appeal in that price for me at all. Sunderland plus 188, probably a little bit more appealing, but I would be inclined to lean towards the tie at plus 220 as the outsider of 3 in the match odds market, because as I say, there's not a huge amount of evidence that either side are strong enough to win it. That was my take on the game. I actually then looked towards the goals, Steve. I think the best pick on the game is under goals here. I think the stats, again, similar to what I did on the Chelsea game, but the long-term stats over the season are pretty good. I think 16 out of 29 games for Middlesbrough have been under 2.5 goals. I think 16 out of 29 games for Sunderland have been under 2.5 goals. I think if you look at Middlesbrough at home, Sunderland away, I think the percentages actually get even higher on under 2.5 goals. I think Middlesbrough is 10 out of 15 at home, and Sunderland is 9 out of 15 away have had under 2.5 goals. So the more I looked at the market and I looked at the trends and I looked at the stats, I think under 2.5 goals at minus 120, I think it might be a minus 122 now. That's a pretty good price. And I think there's so much at stake here. It's such a tight game in terms of Sunderland maybe being the better of the two sides, but they're away from home and their away form's not great. I can see this being quite a tight game. And I was surprised actually that unders was minus 122. It's minus money, so people might not like it being minus money, but I thought it might be as short as minus 140, something like that. So having looked at the match odds and having looked at the goals, I would go towards the goals. And I think all the evidence suggests that unders would be a smarter pick than overs here. So that's my pick on the game, Steve. I'm going under 2.5 goals at minus 122.
Yeah, Adam Thompson in the chat agrees with that, under 2.5 all day. And he's also says be wary of the unders in the Chelsea game if Sanchez is in the net. He has been very mistake prone recently. I think might not start this game.
Yeah,
he's been so poor of late. Player Cam agrees under 2.5 goals in Chelsea. Cobb Gaming, that's a very good point. If you can get on the cards in that market, over 4.5 cards does look good, because those two teams do not like each other. There's a lot at stake. Wouldn't surprise me if the cards come in. Kirk's asking about the corners in this game, over 3.5 for each team. I don't really know enough about it. No. Style probably of both.
No,
all the game state really.
Yeah, same, Steve. It's not a market I looked at on this game, and I don't know enough about the Championship to consider it. Yeah, maybe would be my answer to that. I don't know. Other people out there would have done more research on the corners and these two teams in particular. What I do know, as I say, is the long-term stats. And by long-term, I'm talking about the season as a whole, as opposed to just maybe the last 6 matches or something like that. But the long-term stats do point towards under goals, not just in terms of lots of games being under goals, but actually the goal average. I noticed Sunderland, I think it's only 2.1 goals a game, I think, away from home for them this season. It's really low. So that would be my thinking. Corners and some of the props bets market, I didn't look into on this game.
I can tell you now, James, in terms of the split of the money for this game, 77% of the money and 71% of the tickets are on Sunderland for this game. So the dog is a public dog, is Sunderland. 89% of the tickets are on over 2.5, but 64% of the money is on the under. So basically, the professional money is on the under for this game, and the public tickets are on the over. Under may well be, follow where the money's going, and the under 2.5 goals may well be the one. David says, outside the amazing newsletter, I was wondering if you could share any great resources that you use in sites. There's a great site I use for shot data, and that's FBref. I think that's a really good one for shots. Bet Explorer for form and things like that. There's a lot of free resources out there, David, if you go looking. As long as there's also stuff, like the XG models, like your Y Scouts and that, where you do have to pay for that. But,
and also, I was just going to say, Steve, just for your top line stats, you can kind of go anywhere, can't you, for win, lose, and draw stats and under over goals. I really like Flash Score for that. Flash Scores tables that you can bring up really easily for over under goals, and you can search by over under 2.5, 3.5, 1.5 goals. It's very easy to use. I find myself going back to that more and more. I quite like this is going into the shots on target market, which we're not looking at today actually, but I do like Who Scored. .com. It shows you average player positions after games, which can be useful just to let you know the sort of positions players are getting into, and you can then cross-ref that with some of the shot on target stats which are available. So, like you say, there's so many resources out there these days, aren't there? There's lots and lots of really good statistics sites.
Peter Chalkins, welcome in. Under one first half Asian goals, around like -125 there, could be worth a look. That's a market. Meninda says, could this be a 0-0 like the Burnley Leeds game last Monday? I kind of hope not in a way. Well, I do, but that was one of the worst games I've ever seen in my life. There wasn't a single shot in the second half until like the 85th minute. A shot. Never seen anything quite like it. I don't think it'll be quite as bad as that, but I think it could potentially get quite cagey. We've got matches across Europe as well. Cagliari, Lazio, and Girona, Las Palmas. We'll start with the Girona game in LaLiga, because I actually gave them out as a lean on our Thursday show that we record on a Thursday at -162, and I backed them last week. Girona now -220, which even I'm a bit surprised at, actually. I don't know really why there's such a massive move towards them, but I do think they'll win the game. Las Palmas, I think, are definitely on the downward trend, but the Asian handicap's now at -1. As I say, the money line's at -220. I couldn't advise that on the day now about it at all. But I do believe that Girona will show their quality and beat a Las Palmas side, who may well be a team to fade over the forthcoming weeks, in my opinion. What do you like for this game?
Yeah, I didn't really see anything as strong as you did. I know you've obviously looked into that game probably a bit more than me, Steve, because you were looking at it before our weekly show. I quite like the goals market. More of a lean here than a pick. I'm not as strong on the goals trends in this game as I am on the two games in England, but over 2.5 goals, as you've shown there, is obviously minus money and quite short odds, but I think the stats on over 2.5 goals are actually fairly strong here. You've got 12 out of 21 games for both Girona and Las Palmas in La Liga this season have gone over goals. But interestingly, it's even higher when you look at home and away games involving these two teams. I think it's 8 out of 10 Girona home games and 7 out of 10 Las Palmas away games. So there is some evidence that it could be an overs game here. And if that price on over 2.5 is too short for you, I'd just have a look at over 2.75 goals, which is available at -117. That would be my lean on the game. Obviously, with over 2.75 goals, half your stakes goes on over 2.5 and the other half goes on over 3, meaning that if it is exactly 3 goals, that half of your stakes is returned and the other half wins. That's how that works over 2.75. But I feel there's very little downside to that. If you look at the stats, I think over 2.75 at minus 117 is probably the strongest pick in the goals market. But it's really interesting how much they've been backed in, Steve. Is that down to you and your influence, I think, with calling them out, calling them out very early on the game? It's a huge move. And, how often do we see moves which are that big? Not that often. So it's interesting just to see how much the prices are shifted in 3 or 4 days on Girona to win the game. They're obviously very well fancied.
I think it's a fair line now, though. I do believe that Girona are a -1 Asian handicap favourite against Las Palmas is about where it should be. Whereas before it was, minus 3/4 of a goal line in general.
Yeah.
So I think now the line is fair. I'd be surprised if Girona don't win the game. I mean, I watched the highlights of their match against Arsenal, and it was starting to become really open. We might see an old version of Girona that they were last season. A great watch, enjoyed themselves. They've not got to worry about Champions League now. And if they play well, they're capable of routing Las Palmas, who, they were really bad against Real Madrid a couple of weeks ago. It could have been 6 or 7. And I know Girona are not Real Madrid, but they get in their groove. If this was a goal line that Girona covered on their own, I wouldn't be shocked either. Because on their day, they're very capable of getting a result. But let's see how it goes. Girona money line over 2.5 goals. That could be a good bet. Effie Brilovsky, I like that one actually there. Chelsea and Girona money line double at -110. I'm guessing not -1,000, Kirk. I think that would be a bit too short. -110. Yeah, maybe. I think they'll cash, to be fair. I think that will cash. Oggy says, have you got any shot on target thoughts today?
Yes, I was just going to say, Steve, I saw that from Oggy. No, unfortunately not. I don't. I try to stick to the French league for those because I just have watched a lot more games, is the honest answer. I did have a look at the shot on target markets for the games we're going to come on to later, taking place tomorrow night in the French Cup, Coupe de France. But I don't have any picks in that competition either, primarily because there's a lot of question marks around rotation and team news for those games. I think quite a few managers are going to rotate. So honestly, for me, if you're less than sure about a lineup or less than sort of sure about a lineup, I just think it's a no bet. I know you get your stakes back with the shot on target market picks if a player doesn't start the game, but I just rather leave them alone when it's midweek cup games if there's any uncertainty around the team news. So nothing this week, Oggy, but I will be looking out, as I always do, on Wednesday ahead of the weekly European show.
I can tell you now that 96% of the money and 93% of the tickets are on Girona, along with 89% of the tickets on the over 2.5 goals line for that game. We've got Cagliari Lazio in Serie A. Lazio minus money favourites. Don't think I can have them as a minus money favourite today, James, based on recent form, based on injuries, based on Cagliari being an absolute pain in the arse, to be honest, throughout the whole season on because we win in weekly live. They're a team that whenever we oppose, we generally don't get them right, whoever's doing it, which means, I find them very unpredictable. The team from Sardinia, plus 310, you can back them. I don't know which version of Lazio we're going to get. I know they're struggling with the squads at the minute with injuries, and they are the better team, obviously, as well, which is why they are the favourites. But I personally think a fairer price on Lazio is about plus 120 here. So I can't get involved, but equally, I'm not a bettor who would get on Cagliari very often. So for me, it's worth.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Cagliari, they've been a weird team, haven't they? They've obviously tripped us up a few times on our weekly show. I've been following Serie A quite closely this season. I found them very difficult to read. Not quite sure what sort of performance you're going to get from them. They're at home in this game. Their home form isn't great. It's only 3 wins at home all season. That's in 11 matches. They've only won 2 of their last 5 at home. So very difficult to make a case for them. I think I'm a bit stronger than you on Lazio, Steve, away from home. I do agree with you. They have been a hard read. And if you look at their top line stats away from home, it's like, what are you going to get? I think it's 6 wins and 5 defeats in their 11 matches and no draws. there is one way of looking at Lazio which makes them, I think, a little bit more appealing. That is, if you look at them away from home this season, just against sides who are currently in the bottom half of the table, which obviously Cagliari are. So that's the type of game they're facing here. On that basis, just in those matches, their away record is actually quite good. They've won 5 out of 6 against teams that are currently in the bottom half of the table. The exception to that rule was against Parma. I think they lost that game 3-1. So Parma being 18th, that was obviously a poor result. But they have done better against other teams. They've beaten the likes of Monza, they've beaten Lecce, they've beaten Como. If you see Cagliari as one of those sides around that level, which they are in terms of the league table, but if you see them as also the same standard, then I think on that basis, Lazio become a little bit more appealing. Minus 113. Is it too short? Yeah, it probably is still for me, because they have been inconsistent. I think it feels like they've maybe played the best football they're going to play this season in a way to me. So I prefer them to Cagliari. I think they should win the game. Is it a lean? I think maybe it's a lean for me, but it's certainly not a pick. And of the 4 games we're covering here, the game in Spain, the Girona game, the Chelsea game, and the Middlesbrough Sunderland game in the Championship, this was the one I found most difficult to read and the one that I'm sort of weakest on, because it's one of those where Lazio should win it, but the prices don't really stand out.
What stands out in the chat is that quite a lot of people are liking over 2.5 goals here, or the idea of goals. We've got Superman said over 2.5, just flat bet there. Hey, welcome in. Lazio win both teams to score. Yes, that's plus 280 there. To be fair, if Lazio do win, do you trust them to keep a clean sheet? That's a very good question.
Yeah, maybe not. And again, looking at the away record, I think they've conceded in 8 of their 11 away games, have Lazio. So do they keep clean sheets? Not very often, but they have actually scored in most of their away games. I think they've scored in 9 out of 11, and they've had some big wins actually, or certainly high scoring matches. So yeah, that's really good shout from the comments there. I think maybe both teams to score, or Lazio win both teams to score, might be one way to look at the game.
Otieno Cogello likes the idea. Welcome in. Good to see you in the chat, Otieno. Efi Briofsky. And this is becoming a really popular bet, actually, just across the board in general in soccer now. No draw and over 2 goals in the match, Cagliari. So I've seen a lot going into this market now. Basically, as long as if you like the idea of goals, avoid the 2-all or the 3-all, you're in business. It's a little bit of a risky way, but it does get your odds boosted. Kirk says Lazio team total over 1.5 at minus 108. If you don't trust that defense, that is a good way to go. Actually, Kirk, it all depends how you trust this Lazio. Quite interested that a lot of people are. This feels like the game everyone's betting on, and this is the one match that looks at.
we weren't sure, were we? No, not at all. But it's very interesting. I mean, this is what's great about it. I think also we've seen in the comments so many times as well, Steve, haven't we, on the Europa League show that we've done many times. People come into the chat with a different angle on stuff, and often a huge amount of knowledge about certain teams or markets. So it's always great for us as well to hear what people are thinking.
Just looking here at the data for the game from our traders, and all the money's for Lazio. 98% of the money on Lazio, 95% of the tickets, and around about 85% of the money and tickets are on the over for the game. So that's, if you're following the money, that's the direction to go, Lazio and overs. FR says, how about Braga FC? The question I'm sure directed to me directly today, because I'm out. This will be the match on TV where I'm out tonight in Portugal. Braga, I think they're away at Moreirense. I actually watched the Braga game against Lazio on Thursday, and they got the job done. They lost out by 1 goal to make the playoff round. They didn't know whether to stick or twist. Basically, I think they were just hoping to win and hope that the other results went their way. They look quite decent. They should be beating Moreirense, I think. Not that I really know enough about that team. FR says Lazio is as risky as Chelsea. It's hard to see both of them winning. That's a big goal from FR. Lazio is a trap. Is it a Star Wars game? Says Reese Comroyd. But before we go, whilst you're on the show, James, we've got to talk Coupe de France. Everyone's favourite competition, everyone's favourite domestic competition is back tomorrow. And there's 3 matches around. Now, I just want to talk to you about in general about the Coupe de France, because it is dangerous territory. These are waters which are very choppy, indeed, and it's a lot to do with team selection and stuff. We've not got a graphic for the outright, but PSG are minus 200 favourites just to win the competition. That wouldn't be where my money goes, even though I think they probably will win it. Lille are plus 400 and Nice at 10 to 1. Quite a few big names knocked out of this competition already, to be fair. So we've got 3 matches on there tomorrow. Lille Dunkirk match. Is that a Derby de Nord, a Northern Derby? Troyes against Brest. Brest have gained a lot of neutral fans this season, haven't they, for their performances in the Champions League? And Le Mans against PSG. PSG minus 200 favourites for the competition. I mean, it's very hard to oppose them in terms of predictions, but
it's very sure.
Surely right now.
No, probably not. Well, like you say, because I'm on the show, I just thought a couple of things on the Coupe de France people probably should know or may want to know if they're looking at that competition. The first is about PSG. That is obviously really short, minus 200. I'm the same as you, Steve. I wouldn't back them at that price. We're at the last 16 stage, so there's 16 teams still in it, and they're minus money. However, what I would say to people is, do PSG take this competition seriously? Yes, they do. So don't just go out and oppose PSG because you're thinking, they're more interested in winning League One and the Champions League. I mean, they are more interested in winning League One and the Champions League, but they do take this competition seriously. The Coupe de France is a big deal in France. They've won 7 of the last 10. That tells you how seriously they take it. And even if they rotate, they're strong. So that would be my first piece of advice. Don't go picking anybody else at random at big odds just on the grounds that PSG are not going to take it seriously. They will. And bear in mind that game that you brought up on the graphics, Steve, against Le Mans. Le Mans are a 3rd division team. So unless something went horribly wrong, PSG should really be in the quarterfinals after this week. And then, of course, they're not far from getting to the final at all. So that'll be my first piece of advice. Don't go opposing PSG just on a sort of a point of principle that the competition doesn't matter. The second is, if you look through the games this week, and not so much the games we've got here on Tuesday, but some of the games on Wednesday, there are some fairly big prices on French League One sides who are going head to head. So an example of that would be Strasbourg, who are playing Angers in the last 16, meaning one of those 2 sides is going to make it through to the last 8. At the moment, Strasbourg are plus 4,000 in the outright market, and Angers are plus 10,000 in the outright market, which is obviously huge odds, and one of them will be in the quarterfinals. So that would be my advice looking at the games. I don't, as I say, have a strong pick on any of the matches this week. Team news is going to be really important. I think managers are going to rotate. I think you'll especially see that from Lille and Brest and Paris Saint-Germain because they've got the Champions League as well. So the managers will probably see this as a great chance to rest players. Might be a factor on the Brest and the Lille match. But try and be clever and see who's playing against whom, and will one team go through and then will the odds change? Personally, in the outright market, I'm not actually expecting the odds to change a great deal between this round and the next round. If PSG are still in it, they're going to be a little bit shorter if they get through against Le Mans, and everybody else is probably going to stay about the same. So it's a tricky one because I'm with you, Steve. You can't back PSG at minus 200, but at the same time, I wouldn't really be that strong about anybody else. So might be a competition for people to leave alone, but I just thought while I'm on the show and they're taking place this week, it might be worth us kind of giving our thoughts on how that competition might play out.
I think you make a great point about the Strasbourg-Angers game. You got Angers 100 to 1 to win the tournament and Strasbourg 40 to 1. If whoever you choose out of those to qualify, you're going to be on if they can avoid PSG until the final, you could be on a potential finalist at say 40 to 1.
Yes.
And then you probably would hedge if it was against PSG, but you would still actually make a decent chunk, even if, wouldn't you?
Well, that's my thinking. And if you look at the outright prices before this round of matches, you take a team like Lille, they're plus 400 in the outright market. So they're way shorter now. Part of the reason they're much shorter is they're at home to a 2nd division team. So their chances of getting through are bigger. Nice are a very short price in the outright market compared to Strasbourg and Angers. Nice are plus 1,000. That's because they're playing 3rd division opponents. So it all makes sense, but Strasbourg and Angers playing against each other, one of them is going to go out, but therefore one of them is going to go through. So I think there are ways of looking at the outright market and cross-referencing to the fixtures this week, which might give you some interest in the competition. A lot of it will be down to the draw after that, and particularly avoiding PSG. You don't know if that's going to happen. So It's not something I personally would do. I should say I'm leaving the outright market alone. I'll be very clear about that. I think PSG at those odds, as I say, are unbackable, but deserves to be that short because they take it seriously. But if you are looking at this market, then yeah, just maybe try and read through the rounds and see who might have a chance of staying in it and who's big odds at the moment.
Yeah, we'll be keeping an eye on the PSG fixture tomorrow. A lot can happen in 24 hours in Le Mans, as we know.
Very good.
If just before, I thought that one might make you chuckle, James. If you did have a free $10 bet on anything on these matches tomorrow, where would your money be?
Yeah, good question.
Brest opposable, because I mean Brest look like they've been run ragged a bit recently with the fixtures schedule. Is this a good spot for Troyes?
Yeah, maybe. I don't actually know the Asian handicap Troyes price +1, but maybe Troyes +1, because I do think Brest, yeah, run ragged's a good way of putting it. They've just had 2 huge fixtures of Brest, haven't they? They had Real Madrid in the Champions League last Wednesday. They then had Paris Saint-Germain in the league at the weekend. You know, no disrespect to Troyes or the Coupe de France, but this is the least important of those 3 matches for Brest. I think their manager will see this as not only a good chance to rotate, but almost obliged to rotate because they've got big European games and big league games coming up. So Troyes maybe on the Asian handicap with a +1 goal start. It might be asking a bit too much of Brest to win that game by 2 or more goals in 90 minutes. That would probably be where I would put my $10 bet.
Brilliant. We've got some house specials from Bet Rivers today. In the Chelsea match against West Ham, Cole Palmer to score in the first half and Chelsea to win, +300. Raised odds there. Lazio to score at least 3 goals and win versus Cagliari, +285. Based on what the comments said, that could be quite a live runner as a Bet Rivers house special. And in the Girona Las Palmas game, Bojan Miovski or Abel Ruiz to score the first goal, +170. If either of those 2 players scored first, then you would cash. Notable live streams to watch on Bet Rivers or the Bet Rivers app. Middlesbrough versus Sunderland, that is one probably the biggest game you can watch. But Girona Las Palmas as well, Levante Racing Club, Rio Ave against Porto in the Portuguese Premier Liga. We've got ATP Dallas and Rotterdam plus WTA Cluj is on the live streams. Just looking back through the comments, RHM's asking about Braga and Porto and Galatasaray. We maybe need to cover the Portuguese and Turkish leagues more. We always get so many questions about them.
Yeah.
I noticed Porto about -220, I think is a favourite. -250, sorry, on the favourites line today, I think. Player comes taking Chelsea at half time. Elijah, good to see you. West Ham will score, he thinks. Chelsea aren't great at the back. Galatasaray over 1.5 team total for him as well. Elijah's absolutely convinced West Ham's going to score. If they score, he's going to be back in the chat tomorrow. And so I think I told you so. Dave Clark, good to see you. Maybe a good live bet day, but he's leaning towards Chelsea money line and Lazio Cagliari over 2.5 goals. That is it for Betting Weekly Live today. I can tell you that Dan Roebuck will be on the show tomorrow with our WTA handicapper, Rory Giwani. So get your questions for Rory and Dan tomorrow, and good luck whatever you are taking today in the betting world, in whatever sport as well. But remember to gamble responsibly. Subscribe to the channel if you've not already, and hit the like button as well. It really helps us out. And the Betting Weekly newsletter, of course, subscribe to that. Have been some good winners on it. Wasn't such a good week for the newsletter last week, sadly, but overall it's been hitting some good winners. But thank you very much, James, as always. Brilliant show.
Thank you, Steve. Great to be on with you.
Enjoyed it. And I'll be back on Wednesday with Jack Wright. Tomorrow, like I said, Dan and Rory. But until next time on Betting Weekly Live, it is